Blencowe Resources says a Tier 1 African investment bank may be willing to participate in both debt and project-level equity funding for its Orom-Cross Graphite project in Uganda. For more about this, I'm delighted to be joined by the Chief Executive, Mike Ralston. So, Mike, before we get into the detail of this news relating to the African Finance Corporation's possible assistance with Orom-Cross, what is it about the asset that is attracting interest?
Well, Orom-Cross is one of the largest graphite deposits in the world, an estimated 2 to 3 billion tonnes. A lot of the metallurgical test work we've done and bulk sample work we've done over the last couple of years proves that it's one of the highest grade concentrates in purified graphite. And it's going to be one of the lowest cost mines, both in terms of capital startup and operating costs. So there's an awful lot to like about it. And we're sort of progressing through the final stages of a DFS. And obviously this announcement is one of the key aspects of that, which is funding. There's a lot to like.
So why is Blencowe the right company to manage this project?
Well, we think that we've got the credibility to bring this into production at a time where graphite is going to become more and more topical. It's one of the critical minerals. It sits on most of the Western market critical minerals lists because it is an integral part of the lithium-ion battery, which in itself plays a key role in the energy transition to renewables going forward. So without the batteries and without graphite within those batteries, that energy transition is going to stumble. So graphite being one of those key components, and we have one of the biggest and best graphite projects in the world. So, and we're moving very quickly towards first production. So it's very topical, and obviously we're doing everything we can to bring it into production at a time which is a great opportunity for us.
So you're saying it's the biggest, but how big are the funding requirements for Orom-Cross? What does it look like in terms of quantities and mix of debt and equity?
Well, we haven't completed the DFS yet, so I want to be just a bit cautious in terms of the numbers, but we're looking at around $10 million for the stage 1 production requirement, which is a pretty smaller number than the 100 million, which is then when we build it up to commercial scale and include the downstream processing beneficiation plant. But these are obviously numbers that we're going to involve both the DFC and now the AFC have obviously shown interest as well. And we have a number of other strategic investors that are all showing a lot of interest in terms of the funding solution. So we're building it. We obviously want to put as many parties into play as possible and just understand who wants to be there once we've completed the studies and ultimately what they'll give us and at what terms. So we're just working through it as you have to. We've done this before and we know how to do it. So we're really working through the key components of the DFS now, which is offtake and funding, and hope to have those locked in by the middle of the year when we're ready to make the investment decision.
It's starting to sound a bit crowded though, Mike, because you mentioned the DFC, which is the US International Development Finance Corporation. It's already on board as a cornerstone funding partner for debt for Orom-Cross. So what can the African Finance Corporation offer in parallel?
Well, the AFC have indicated their interest to do both debt and equity. So whatever debt component is left beyond the DFC, AFC have expressed interest to take that, as well as whatever equity component, as well as the equity component for the phase 1 production. I might add that all of the equity components are at project level to avoid more dilution in the London listed company. So it's really all about fitting in the different debt and equity players and then working out exactly what we're going to do with each and ultimately bring them all together so that we can fulfill one big funding solution for phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 and bring this through into production as quickly as we can.
Because I was going to ask you, taking all this into consideration, is there still a need for a strategic investment partner for the equity portion of this funding? Because you've mentioned debt a lot.
Yeah, there always is room for somebody else who's showing interest. As I say, the AFC have put up their hand and said they would like to take the equity component as well as the debt that remains. But we are, in discussion with a number of different strategic investors who've all shown interest to be involved. And I think it makes a lot of sense for us to keep talking to them to just ensure that we can, bring as many credible, valuable partners into play as possible, because ultimately nothing's ever done until it's done. So you want to have as many parties involved. And then we've just got to try to understand who the best and most credible partners are and take it from there. So we'll continue to talk to the various parties that we have begun with discussions with already.
So when is it going to get done then, Mike? Because what are the next stages to complete this funding solution?
Well, I think the completion of the feasibility study is the most important part. And with that, we've got 3 different studies. There's the phase 1 to kick off production next year, then the phase 2 when that ramps up, and then the phase 3 is when we bring in this downstream purification beneficiation plant in Uganda. So all 3 of them need to be completed in their own right, because they are investment decisions in their own right. But they all come together as one, because ultimately they're all Orom-Cross and what happens to that project going forward. So we will stagger those into play and obviously look to get the funding for each and bring it all into play at the same time as completing all the other DFS work, such as offtake. We obviously need to know that we can sell product, and all the infrastructure work. We're completing a big drilling program there at the moment. That's obviously underway, which will significantly increase both our resources and reserves. So, there's a lot going on, and that means a lot of news flow going forward as well, which is good.
So right at the beginning, you was telling me that Blencowe has the credibility to take on the Orom-Cross project. But talk to me about the credibility of AFC. It's because this is quite a new entity to me. So how big a deal is it to have them showing interest?
Well, AFC are one of the top financial institutions in Africa. They sit right there at the very top of the tree in terms of credibility, in terms of what they've done in the past, and certainly what they can do going forward. So we've had a relationship with them for quite a while. They've done a lot of due diligence, both in terms of the project and on us. And at the end of the day, it's a relationship that has been built over a long time. Now, we've obviously got to take that, a bunch of steps forward before we get to the end goal. But these are all important milestones. And I think that having an African bank like the AFC involved in this project, has huge benefits for us. Because obviously we're an African project. And so we would like them to be involved, and we've said that to them from day one. But as I say, we've just got to keep working step by step, make sure that we get what we need to delivered, and then have the ability for them to look at the DFS and make their own decisions about where they want to come on board.
So finally, Mike, you mentioned milestones there. In summary, what are the key milestones ahead, and which one is the low-hanging fruit?
Well, they're all low-hanging because they're all happening together. There's a drilling program underway, and we've already announced some of the early stage results going forward there in terms of, or certainly in terms of completing, but there's more drilling happening right now. There's a lot of different offtake discussions happening. My COO is literally on a world tour, knocking on doors and getting a lot of fantastic responses at the moment. And we're obviously doing a lot of work on the ground. We submitted a revised environmental approval into the Ugandan government, which we should be getting back the results quite soon. And obviously infrastructure studies continue there as well. So a combination of all these factors together with the funding partners means that we're going to have a lot of news flow at all times. And that's quite exciting because it all culminates with the studies being completed. And then, we get into the sort of meaty part of this, which is let's get production started as soon as we can.
Very good. And as you said, there are a lot of news flow to come on the immediate horizon. Mike Ralston, Chief Executive of Blencowe Resources, thank you very much indeed.